Why do we fear? Fear is just a survival response to the dangers of the world. It's also a compass. If you want more out of life, you have to do something you've never done before. And even if it was easy, what would be the point? For the first week, I will be the me I am now. This Western world dude can be way too civilized. My civility cannot endure the savagery of the ice. After a while, someone else takes over. I call him the Beast. The Beast doesn't give a shit about boredom, pain, drudgery, or anything else. I let him take over. He has a chant, and it goes like this. Go, go, go. My name is Akshay Nanavati. I'm a Marine Corps veteran and an ultra runner. I'm the author of FEARVANA. FEARVANA is a concept I created based on the idea that fear and nirvana, two seemingly contradictory concepts, but I've come to learn are very complementary. Fear is actually an access point to enlightenment and bliss. Fear is in fact a gift. In every fall, in every struggle, in every suffering, there's a new awakening to be had. After I came back from Iraq, I struggled with survivor's guilt from losing one of my brothers to the war. I was diagnosed with PTSD, and I battled debilitating depression. I used to drink a liter of vodka a day. I would wake up, I would drink until I pass out, wake up and drink. I got to a point where I was on the brink of suicide. That was not how I saw myself. And that's what led me to this concept of FEARVANA.
To cross Antarctica and do what Akshay's doing, you need to be both a lone wolf but also have a pack.
There he is.
What I saw in Akshay is I saw a man who really likes to push the boundaries.
So good to see you, brother.
I saw a man who loves and is not afraid of physical suffering.
What's up, man?
The man who is taking it to the next level.
So we're gonna go into the bottom position here, and you're gonna hold, we're gonna change it to eccentric. This is gonna maximally test you. Good.
In his extreme levels of training, we've been able to incorporate the latest technology as it relates to neuroscience. Using sensory information, it's amplifying it. Simplistically put, at max intensity, right, 4 repetitions is equivalent to 1,000 neurological repetitions.
Right, we need to be driving high quality calories into you, amino acids for the muscle repair, right? Carbohydrates for just energy needs, etc.
It's my job as Akshay's coach to make sure that his training's going right, that his nutrition's on point, and also develop and formulating some strategies to make sure that he can get across the ice.
Got you.
When you get out of the military, you go from having all this structure and then you have nothing. I read his book, FEARVANA, him sharing his story like that, being vulnerable, it changed my life. My number one focus for you is I need you focused on Akshay coming home alive, period. He needs to have total focus on what he's doing. And if it's not on what he's doing, that could potentially be the end of him.
Akshay is a crazy son of a bitch. You and I have had a lot of discussions about, mental warfare, about preparing for battle. You're not gonna have your friends around you to help you. You're not gonna be able to text us for things. Everything relies on you. How are you preparing for that?
The idea of in Antarctica is a great life's work. I think the only thing that Akshay fears is not following through on his potential.
Mentally, nothing will stop him.
Let's put aside the storms, the crevasses, the hostility, the unforgiving nature of the environment, the suffering. To experience Antarctica, to go 105 days across something to do no man has ever done, the transformation I will go through, I don't know yet. I can't possibly know, and I don't want to know. The hellish, unimaginable hardship I will face in Antarctica is the means, not the purpose, for why I must go on this journey. What I ultimately seek is transcendence. This is about more than just me. I go to find the human soul.
So let me just do a formal introduction. So I'm going to ask first a dear friend of mine, amazing human. I won't say anything personal. I'll just give the professional background. Dr. Cheri is a former trauma surgeon. She is one of the top plastic surgeons in the world. Her specialty is vaginal plastic surgery, but she's also an integrative doc that does peptides, exosomes, ozones, keeps people healthy, has a real expertise in speed healing. And I thought it'd be really interesting to, I said, I'd like you to do this interview with me with Akshay because I'd like to get a doctor's perspective of what is actually going on in the physical realm. So please give it up for Dr. Cheri. And then I'm going to interview, I'm going to introduce Akshay. So Akshay Nanavati has, I never say his last name right. I always just like saying Akshay. Okay, so just suffice to that. Freaking difficult. It took me like a month to get that one right. He's overcome drug addiction, PTSD from fighting in Iraq with the Marines, depression and alcoholism that pushed him to the brink of suicide. Since then, he's built a global business, run ultramarathons, spent 10 days in darkness, and explored the most hostile environments on the planet. From mountains to underwater caves to polar ice caps, despite 4 biological defects, including a blood disorder that 2 doctors told him would kill him in boot camp, he is now a sponsored athlete and is currently training for a 110-day, 1,700-mile solo, never-before-accomplished crossing of Antarctica. Combining his life experience with years of research in science and spirituality, he wrote the amazing book FEARVANA, right here, about which the Dalai Lama said, FEARVANA inspires us to look beyond our own agonizing experiences and find the positive side of our lives. All the profits from the book are going towards charity. Akshay is now on a mission to help our human family fall in love with suffering in order to create a life of greater meaning, purpose, joy, and fulfillment. Please give it up for Akshay. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, brother.
You know what? We've done this before, but this is going to be
The day before, left for the Arctic, and the day I'm back.
yeah. I mean,
That's right.
Well, so so you just got back from some training. Give us a bit of a flyover of what the last few weeks of your life have been like.
I've been up in the Arctic in northern Norway in a place called Svalbard for the last 2 months on
it was supposed to be 4, but ended up being 3 separate expeditions, totally about 30 days on expedition, and then also filming a little bit for the documentary. And then, because one of my expeditions got canceled, just hanging out doing cold river dips like the video I sent you, and exploring ice caves and various adventures. But it was 3 polar expeditions as training for Antarctica in preparation for this. So this is my final time on ice before I go to Antarctica this October.
Wow. So me and Cheri have prepared some questions for you using AI. I'm kidding, we haven't. Well, this is going to be totally off the cuff because I've interviewed you before. You've actually visited Cheri when you needed some recommendations on having your fingers amputated. How many fingers have you had?
I've gotten 1 finger amputated so far, and I'm prophylactically removing this one in 2 weeks because this one was also frostbitten. I didn't lose it, but when I was in the Arctic, it got to -37 and below, so it was giving me a lot of trouble in the cold. So because I think it'll be a huge liability in Antarctica, I've decided to prophylactically have that tip removed.
Okay. How many fingers and toes does one need to have removed before you're like, screw this nonsense?
Well, I got 8 more after this, so I feel like I'm golden, you know, for many more Antarctic trips after this.
Yeah. So, you know, the video that we saw previously, your company's FEARVANA. I mean, you certainly, I've never met another human that puts themselves in sort of the situations that you do. And it's quite fascinating, and the conversations we've had before, including in this room, have blown people away and gotten some great insights, so we can leave some time for some Q&A for all of you after we go through some perspective on it. How would you define fear? Like, what is physical fear first, and then what is mental fear?
So ultimately, it's the brain's evolutionary response in response to risk. Now, the risk doesn't have to be actual in the sense that there's a lion attacking me. It can be perceived risk as well. And so the brain responds to that risk. And there's a visceral response, especially when the fear is amplified. So, you know, heart rate increase, sweaty palms, things like that. But it's a mental response. And in intense fear, you know, they call it the fight or flight, although it's a little bit more complex than that. But the amygdala, your quote-unquote fear center of the brain, hijacks the brain, which is why it shuts down the prefrontal cortex, like what I refer to in FEARVANA as the human brain, and you're in this heightened state to respond to this risk. So it's an emotion that has been demonized extensively. Everybody hears the word fear and thinks of it as bad, but it is a necessary evolutionary response in order to keep us alive, but also, as I said in there, as a compass to direct us to things that, you know, Joseph Campbell said, the cave you fear to seek holds the treasures. The cave you fear holds the treasures you seek.
Yeah, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasures that you seek. That's right, exactly. Thank you. I like when I can sound like I'm smart.
Thank you for clarifying. Exactly, that's the one. And so everything I do is absolutely terrifying. Antarctica scares the living hell out of me. So I use it as a compass, and I don't think it's bad. And the essence of FEARVANA is to combat that demonization of fear and to show that fear is not the antithesis of nirvana. It can be an access point to it.
So, and this is going to sound totally weird, but why would something like, for some people, asking someone out on a date be more scary and threatening than, say, crossing the Antarctica?
So that was my case. I was more terrified doing that than Antarctica. So in that context, because your brain develops comfort zones even in discomfort. So for me, even while writing this book, for example, I would procrastinate by running a marathon. Now, running a marathon, I would still suffer, but that was my comfort zone of suffering, right? I play in that arena. So, but doing that thing, or in this case, like asking this girl out or writing, was very new. So the more you play in the arena, the more you develop a comfort for it. So going in that cold water, for example, there's no fear because I play in that space, right? In this space, there was a lot more fear. So it's where you develop that, and it doesn't mean it's still not scary. Like Antarctica still scares me because I know how brutal that journey is. But you can develop your zone of what becomes normal, comfortable, your wheelhouse. We all each have that in different arenas, and that's why, for me, you know, that seemingly normal thing is far more terrifying than doing the other crazy shit that I do in many other arenas.
No, exactly. So Dr. On, how about I refer to you as Dr. On? What is going on in the body when someone is going through experiences like this? What he's putting himself through? I mean, I know that may be hard to describe, but if you could,
So I think one of the key words that comes to mind when you speak about that, you know, what's the difference between asking a girl out on a date versus doing this amazing, like, out of the world kind of thought idea is adaptation. And I think that I would love to hear your kind of idea of how you are preparing for this, because I believe that in medicine we talk about adaptation of the cell. The human body is constantly adapting to the stresses that we have every single day, and our immune system is adapting to the virus that you had, and we are changing constantly. And we had discussed prior to this was also like muscle memory. So if you are constantly adapting and how you're preparing for this, then that doesn't seem so bad because your body is kind of changing to that. So I believe that a lot of the things he's doing in his mind and his body's adapting physically and mentally to his mission, but from a cellular level, what's happening in his cells and everything is working towards the adaptation. So I would love to hear your perspective, since all of us are business owners, we're facing stress and adapting to the changes every day and making decisions that we're super uncomfortable with. So how do you see what you're doing translating to business owners and everyday decisions?
I mean, ultimately, right, everybody's on their own hero's journey in multiple contexts, but I believe the ultimate journey that we're all on, whether we are consciously pursuing it or not, is that journey within, right? Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the need for self-actualization. Whether or not we're consciously seeking it, we are on that. And so what draws me to that is that arena is playing on that space, the spiritual space of that self-actualization. But pushing the envelope in the spiritual realm, in the mental realm, and you push it in the business realm, in every realm, the further you're expanding that edge, the further you're creating, because stressors create the adaptation response, to your point, but you're further exploring new avenues in the places in the realm I'm playing into the human soul. And the further you go, the more you are opening up, and that's a big reason why I go and why I'm pushing that edge. And so whether you're not a business owner or whatever realm you're playing in, like, find places, you know, the more you know, as I was saying last time, the more you explore the edge of suffering, the greater you'll find salvation of the soul. So seek out suffering in multiple contexts, not just this is, okay, I'm going to grow in business. Seek out suffering of the spirit. We were talking earlier about the darkness retreat. You know, put yourself in places that are going to force you to open new doors within yourself that you haven't opened before. And it's horribly uncomfortable. Yeah. But that's the value, and that's the hero's journey. That's where you're going to tap into something you've never found. And so I play in that by doing it. I mean, by preparing for this is tire dragging, as you saw. That's a big one. That's the physical realm. But spending 10 days in darkness, doing what I just did, the last expedition I did, I spent 10 days completely alone in the Arctic. Completely alone, you know, and I maybe saw 5 people the whole time, and you're just in this barren white landscape. And as we were saying earlier, when you're in silence, you really start to hear. And so wherever we are in our journey, taking that space for it. You know, Carl Jung said people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And we do everything we can to distract ourselves from ourselves. Even sometimes the positive things. Like when I came back from Iraq, you know, before I started struggling with drinking, I was doing positive things to distract myself, like going to Greenland, running marathons, working on my business. But ultimately, I was just distracting myself from myself. Yes. Until I took that time for stillness. And so I think that stillness is the key to find that evolution of the soul in a way that you haven't found before. So I spent a lot of time doing that, being alone and hearing what I believe to be the voice of God, and tapping into intuition, tapping into the sounds of nature, tapping into something that you don't get in the realm of distractions that we always find ourselves in.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things you had discussed is like you just did 10 days. And you didn't just go from 0 to 10. You kind of created a series.
We had half a banana.
Maybe you started with 1 day and then 5 days.
7 days first and then 10
7
after.
days and 10 days. Yeah. Okay.
But even doing the 7-day darkness retreat, I had done a lot of hard stuff before that, you know, to build myself, running the ultramarathons and keep pushing that edge. Antarctica is kind of the encapsulation of, I mean, it'll not only be the first ever human power crossing, it'll be the longest any human being has spent solo in the polar regions. And geographically, I'll be the most isolated human being on the entire face of the Earth. So you're literally at a level of isolation and solitude that is unmatched. And although there's definitely a bit of nerves, I am very excited to see what I will hear.
Mark T. Molini, mute your mics.
Yeah, you're doing 110 days solo, no other human being, and a temperature of minus 40 to minus 80 degrees. Yeah. That is pretty crazy.
So what does the body, Dr. On? And by the way, thanks for supporting the Genius Network shirt. She doesn't care. She doesn't care. Yeah. So, what is this? How does one prepare themselves physically for something like this? Because there's not like a book written on. Here's for the people that are going to cross the Antarctica for 110 days by themselves, dragging a 400-pound sled, wearing the same pair of underwear and clothes for the entire 110 days. And maybe the freeziness will keep the odor down, but there's going to be, I mean, you're putting yourself in incredibly crazy. So what, how does one prepare?
Well, the book is going to be written in December 2023. So after it's done.
Friends with like.
I think a lot of it is. I mean, so much of it. How much of it? Well, I'm going to ask Akshay because he's preparing for it too. But I believe so much of it is mental. And if you think about 100%, what do you think is the percentage of mental preparation versus physical?
I think 80% I would say is mental. Like physically, I do obviously, I'm training tire dragging, a lot of hiking. I'm constantly working on getting fat. Like I lost about 10 pounds in the Arctic, so I'm 162 now. I was 174, something like that before I left. So before I go to Antarctica, I want to get to 180, putting on more muscle and fat. Because even I'll be eating 6,500 calories a day, but I'll be burning 8 to 10,000. So even at 6,500, I'll be calorically deprived. And then the question is, why not take more? But because I'm dragging all the food myself in my sled, so I have to kind of find that right balance of how much to take. So physically, obviously doing that, but the mental challenge, when you are skiing for up to 12 hours a day, you are skiing in empty white nothingness. So there's no stimuli. So your mind starts to wander, and that is the most daunting aspect of it. Because I ski in 75-minute shifts, and you can have some shifts where that 75 minutes feels like a lifetime. You're just waiting for that shift to end. Your mind is, you're in pain physically. Sometimes that stillness of mind you have to deal with is brutal. It's also beautiful because your mind you'll have that dialogue with yourself that you don't get to have otherwise, but it is extremely challenging to deal with that level of stillness of mind. Because as we were talking about, like unlike, let's say, climbing Everest or climbing a mountain, environment forces you into flow. If I'm climbing a mountain and there's a 1,000-foot drop on each side, the environment keeps you focused, your mind focused there. And even as you're climbing up and down the mountain, the terrain changes. In polar exploration, every day you're doing the same thing in flat white nothingness. So your mind has the space to wander, which is beautiful, but also very, very challenging. So that stillness of mind I'm cultivating through experiences like the Darkness Retreat, through daily meditations, through even when I'm tire dragging. But that's the most challenging part, is just dealing with that, because your mind can go crazy.
I don't know, it's not like.
Yeah, so I think, first of all, mental is so important, but I think from a cellular level, like the body is going to strain its amount of physical activity and stress. And the big thing in terms of preparation is really making sure, number one, recovery. So really making sure you're going on to the starting line with the least, like the best prepared you can be. So I think a lot of the things of detoxification, nutrition, and really getting the body so that it can utilize oxygen delivery as efficient as it can be possible. So I think one of the things that Akshay is doing right now is really getting his body, not just mentally, but physically, as clean as possible. So we're operating at 100% when we're starting at the finish line, and what we can do to really recover at the highest level, and then allowing himself to really go 110 days at that high level. So we're constantly giving the body that.
So, to frame this from the perspective of everyone that is sitting here or watching this or listening to this, and framing it from humans have their own fears. Like, let's go back to the Joseph Campbell saying, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek. So if you think of what is your version of the cave that you fear to enter, and what is the treasure that you're seeking, because people will do almost anything to avoid doing the things to get to the things that they want the most, myself included. I mean, I'm littered with certain levels of fear, and I used to bullshit myself all the time, thinking, I could overcome it or hype myself up in a certain way. And I look at different layers of fear. I was sitting with my friend Peter Thomas and then Ken Wells, who's a therapist, who's 71 years old. Peter's 85 years old. This is 2 days ago, and we were having a conversation because Peter's coordinating an event that he wants to bring Ken to with 2 billionaires, a Navy SEAL, very successful, wealthy people that on every measure have all the money that you would ever need and lifetimes more. But talking about what could you have a conversation with about success with these people, and the whole conversation came down to like fear. You know, what do you want in your life? What are you afraid of? And I made this comment. I said, you know, I said, Ken, I think I first heard this from you, that the only healthy form of fear is concern, right? But then I just heard you say, you know, you're framing of fear. And of course, I love your perspective of fear, and I love your perspective of suffering, because you reframe a lot of it. And I have often said, do something every day that scares you, because I heard that early on in my life, and it gave me sort of a reason to face things that were difficult. And I will always preface it by saying that doesn't mean running out in front of traffic. That's just stupid, right? However, a lot of people would look at what you're doing and say, that's not only stupid, that's fucking insane, that's crazy. You're literally putting yourself in a situation where there is a very high likelihood you will die, and you're doing it anyway. And so I've also sat back and said, it's not my life though, right? If someone wants to do their life, let them do their life. You know, if you're hurting other people, that's a whole nother conversation. But the thing is, so to go to fear, what is the cave that you fear to enter? What is the treasure from your perspective that you're seeking? Is it God? Is it spiritual? Is it something for you? Is it something for humanity? What's the best way you could articulate what it is that you're looking for? Or whatever's looking for you. Because you might not be looking for something, it might be looking for you, and because that's what a calling is.
Yeah. You know, collectively through doing all these journeys, the thing I'm now looking for is much more abstract than concrete. So it is, one could refer to it as an enlightenment. It's finding a light, tapping into areas of the human soul that haven't been explored, and then bringing that wisdom back from the edge. Because I get to play, and it is a privilege that I get to go to Antarctica. Everybody here in this room, I get to choose my own suffering. Many people in the world, as we know, don't have that. So I get to go to places that many people don't get to go. And as a result, I believe I have a responsibility. You know, when I was in Iraq, my vehicle drove over an active bomb that for some reason didn't explode. My friend, who you all saw up there, he drove over an active bomb, and it did explode, and he was killed. And that's always plays me. Every time I'm on the ice, it lives with me, it plays with me. And to me, I owe a debt for this life I've been gifted, and I have to pay that debt. And how I pay that debt is by playing so far out on the edges of suffering, of stillness, of isolation, and bringing that wisdom back from the edge to then help others navigate the existential burdens we all face in this human adventure. So what I'm seeking, and the beautiful part about that is that there's no end to that, right? You don't arrive until death, right? There's always more to seek. So every new journey is pushing a new edge, but it's also a line I have to be careful of, because if you push so far, like many people, outdoor sports people, they die doing what they do, right? So I'm always looking, and we talked a little bit about this last time, is playing on the duality. So when I push one edge, I'm also playing on others, like meeting a girl is a different kind of edge. Writing a book, building a business is a different kind of edge, you know? So exploring edges on different categories and in different aspects on all the series of dualities that exist in the human experience, and bringing that wisdom back from the edge. Mm-hmm. But every time I go, I mean, I don't know what I'll find in Antarctica. I don't know who I'll become, right? Because how can you when you're pushing so far out there? But every time I go, even on this 10-day journey, I get these, what I call spiritual downloads that hit me, like I did in the Arctic, and then it's a beautifully, obviously personally I get so much from that fulfillment of that spiritual journey, but then bring it back and help others use that in their own arena. But ultimately everybody has to, of course, like you can't, who was it, Jim Rohn, you can't make somebody do your push-ups, you can't hire to do somebody your push-ups for you, right? So you can provide like a lighthouse, a guidance, but everybody's got to step into the arena. Everybody's got to go to that space that, and that's what we were talking about, kind of talking about this, like we're wired to kind of look for the easiest, quickest way out of the pain. And what I want to do with FEARVANA is have people not stop doing that and actually seek out the pain, seek out the suffering, embrace the suffering, like dance with that darkness, you know, and chase the fear. And that's where you all find the rewards. And what I can do is maybe just help provide a pathway to the door, but everybody's got to walk through it.
Yeah. So what irks the hell out of you when you hear people that will create excuses for why they're not able to get to where they want to go. And I'm saying this really from the lens of learned helplessness. You know, I'm sure most people know the concept of learned helplessness. And I mean, I think we are living in a world right now where media and influence and propaganda is actually, in very subtle and devious ways, training people to be helpless, entitled, blaming other people, manipulated, and that's happening from the external. When people do it to themselves, that's a whole nother level of self-propaganda, self-manipulation, right? Yeah. So because the interesting thing about you is you endure and have endured and deal with some of the most difficult physical challenges, but I mean, I've never seen you like lose your shit, although you've talked about like going crazy, right? You've talked about the beast. I mean, you know, I'd love to see how you contain the intensity of this and how you also have acceptance and grace and appreciation and gratitude and kindness and love, because I see you demonstrate that continuously. And that's layered on a lot of PTSD. I mean, you've witnessed an enormous amount of death and violence in your life. So a couple things. What the hell irks you where you're like, really shut the hell up and, you know, just step up to the plate? And the other side, you know, let me help you here. Because, I mean, I think you're a mix of, like, freaking the hardest, you know, military, you know, sergeant and gentle coach at the same time. It's you're a very interesting character.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. You know, I think you have to find that fine line between enabling somebody versus supporting them. And I've flirted with that line with, like, my ex-wife who went through a whole crazy situation, and it was enabling, and I was making my own mistakes in that way. I was enabling, as opposed to, you have to go through the suffering yourself to grow from it, right? And it's a hard thing when you're helping other people do that, especially when they're very, very, very close to you, right? So I think you have to, I mean, rock bottom is relative to everybody, but there's value in rock bottom, you know? So there's value in seeking out and helping people suffer. And I see that parents, in my opinion, make the biggest mistakes, especially like Indian parents are notoriously overprotective. It's a whole thing, and you know what I'm talking about. And so you're not helping them, you know? So I think, I guess the question is, on the one hand, it frustrates me to see, yes, that victim mentality. You can see how it's being cultivated, and the entitlement world, and it bothers me, but I also empathize with it, because we are ultimately, if you're not conscious and aware, you're just a slave to your environment, right? And most of us are not conscious aware. Like Carl Jung says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. And most of us are slaves to that external thing. So to a certain degree, I think there's just empathy. And you can't, like, I learned this through a lot of that whole situation with my ex-wife. You can't help somebody if they're not. Like, it was a time in my life where I go out of my way to try to help. And at this point, if you come to me, I'll go out of my way. I'll walk through hell to help people who want to come to me. But if you don't, and you're just going to stay in it, you have to endure it.
Right.
You're going to go through that, and when you hit rock bottom, maybe you'll get out of it. But you cannot help. You cannot really help anybody. The biggest thing you can do is be a lighthouse. Like like Gandhi said, right? Be the change you wish to see in the world. So I think it frustrates me, but more than that, I just empathize and I feel bad. But I think the other part of your question about how I'm so grateful and compassionate is because, you know, contrast is what gives life its flavor and its value. So when you play on all edges, you start to appreciate I mean, just this morning, I took a hot shower before coming here. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate every hot shower I take. It is just heavenly. I'm standing like, this is so awesome.
You're like, you know? Taking it in, boy. This is about to disappear
exactly,
forever.
Exactly. And it's still, and then driving over here, you know, I just got back to Arizona, so I'm looking at green again, because I was an empty white nothingness. I'm looking at the desert terrain, coming here, being invited here. I'm about catching up with my friends tomorrow, and it just feels, because I experienced isolation, because I experienced cold, because I experienced Arctic. Now I come back to this, and the amplification of that gratitude, and it's visceral. It's not just like I feel grateful. It's I am viscerally appreciative of everything, because you know how precious it is. You know it could be gone. And one of the spiritual downloads I had on the ice when I was skiing just now, it hit me in a very visceral way how I was skiing, and actually kind of crazy part is this shift, I had maybe 5 hours into the day, I was going to put on my music, and 3 times I turned on my iPod, and 3 times it died. I'm like, this is, well, come on, I want to listen to music. And then I was like, all right, fuck it, I can't listen to music this shift. And it was like something was telling me that shift, you shouldn't listen to music. And that shift, it hit me in a very profound way that every day I wake up, whether it be on ice or here, that version of me in that morning is never existing ever again. That version of me is dead. So every day, it's not so much like every day live it like your last, because otherwise we wouldn't do the hard things sometimes. Right. It's more like live every day as if this is your entire lifetime. I will be dead. This, and even the memory of this, like I have a memory of who I was this morning, and I go deep into this in FEARVANA, so I won't go into the neuroscience of it, but memories are malleable. They're fake. Our memories lie to us all the time. So when I take that into account with the fact that this moment is gone forever, this version of me is dead. And every day I am dying and I am reborn. And when I think about that this whole day is a whole lifetime, it changes the way you experience and want to live. I mean, I'm not perfect at doing this every day in the normal world, but every time even that consciousness of that steps in, it just amplifies how you live your life. And it makes you appreciate everything so much more. And the other spiritual download I hit like the next day was I was skiing in very tough conditions. The snow was really soft, and it had just been 2 days in this brutal polar storm and going up and down the soft snow. And as it was doing this, it started hitting me, and I kept saying, thank you, God, for these perfect conditions. And it hit me that the conditions couldn't be anything other than what they were. And because the conditions are exactly what they are perfect. And the only thing taking us away from the perfection of each moment is our own stuff, is our own constructs. And it doesn't mean you fight to create a new reality, but for what we can control, everything is purely perfect because it cannot be anything other than what it is. Right. And when you live that way again, you appreciate just, this is perfect, this is absolutely beautiful. And I think that's what helps cultivate a deep sense of visceral gratitude in everything. Whether it be the people in my life, the experiences that I have. I mean, coming back into having a home, it was a lot nicer sleeping in a bed than a cold tent, you know? So, so I was like, this is sweet. I got a warm bed.
do you ever doubt your decisions since you've made it so public and say, wow, you know, I mean, maybe you do, maybe you don't. I have no idea.
I don't doubt I mean, I have moments on ice where I'm like, fuck, this sucks. Like you're just going through. I don't doubt that, but every time I come back from expedition, immediately I know that I'm going back. You know, so it's never. So I think that's part of it. You like everything worthwhile doing. Have had a moment where I'm like, this really sucks, and I don't want to do it. So that's part of it. But I don't doubt the decision. But I did have a bit of doubt in my ability to do the thing that the Arctic trip helped crush that doubt. Because there's a difference between knowing and thinking. If you think you can do something, that's a construct. That's a conceptual thought that has a layer above it. Knowing is. Knowing is visceral. Knowing is not a thought, it's a way of being. And it's not like there's a thing you have to do to get to knowing. It's not like it's a magical X. But as you get on the journey, something happens that is shift from a thought that I think I can do this to I know I can.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like a presence.
Exactly. It just changes. I mean, I feel like, I don't know if anybody else will notice it, but the person I'm looking at in the mirror today is different than how I was 3 months ago before I left for the Arctic. And it'll be different after Antarctica. So, but that's a result of the shift in that knowingness.
Yeah.
But that comes from doing the work, doing the things that we're talking about. You know.
So do you think of yourself? Because some people are goal setters, other people are problem solvers, right? Some people that have problems setting goals or don't set goals, that are in the entrepreneurial world, which is mostly the world I understand. They solve problems. They're just looking for problems to solve. Other people, they set goals, right?
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of a mix on how people perceive different ways of going through life. What do you, when you go a month past this successful expedition, if you do it, right, if you accomplish it, where do you see yourself being? Do you even think of it that way, or are you just like, that's not where I'm at, I'm just doing it?
I have a sense of the things I want to focus on after this. Like I want to get back to focusing on the brand. I want to focus on a relationship and a family and all that. But it's too far ahead right now to think. You know, I have a sense of what I want to do, but I'm not thinking that far ahead because this journey is just so big. And I mean, there's adventurers who think it's impossible to even do a human-powered crossing of Antarctica. So it's even considered impossible by many in the adventurer world. That I'm not thinking that far ahead.
Gotcha.
But I think it's a combination of like this is the goal. But even on a larger scale, when I think about my life mission, the greatest problem that I think exists in the human condition is the problem of human suffering. It's the problem that we've been trapped, because again, you can have all the money in the world, as you know, or have zero and you're still going to suffer. And how do we navigate that, I think, is the greatest problem in the human condition that is very much the essence of how I want to live my life. Like when I was in the darkness retreat, it came to me, the words I want written on my tombstone is, he brought light into darkness. So that's the problem I'm solving through my own journey, and then sharing the wisdom to help others navigate there.
That's really interesting, considering what you're doing in the that gives a whole nother context to your darkness retreats and stuff.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to see if any of you have any questions as it relates to this conversation in your life, and we'll start with Nick Peterson, the Nick Peterson.
Yeah, I'm not the Douglas James, but I'll get there. A couple questions, which might lead to other questions. I love, first of all, so these are all Guardian Academy members, so we talk a lot about learned helplessness, which you touched on. I'd say the most used quote inside the Guardian Academy by me and the team is by Virginia Satir. Are you familiar with? She's a pediatric psychologist. Most prefer the certainty of misery to the misery of uncertainty. And it explains so much. So I love you touched on that. But more importantly, did you ask this girl on a date?
I did.
Did she say yes?
Yes.
Okay.
I cannot tell you how anxious I was. It was terrifying.
Did it go well? Did you go on a date?
It did go well. We met her in Norway, and it went well. Still navigating a lot of stuff now. My life is complex, so the things that I do.
You're a lot more nervous talking about girls than
oh, I can jam when I talk about suffering in Antarctica.
Can we go on a movie again? Yeah, 110 days from now, maybe.
So one, awesome, that's great, congrats. One of the questions is, does that make it more difficult? Like knowing that you're going on this expedition and like, crap, I just met a girl. Like, is that actually something that you're like, you think about that?
I do, a lot, and there's no, it is hard to navigate that because in some ways it's almost like unfair to put somebody through that. And I don't know after this, like I probably might tone down the nature of expeditions that I do. I don't see myself ever becoming somebody who doesn't do this stuff, but you can do lighter stuff and not go out for 110 days. That option is available, believe it or not. But I do think about that, and it seems like right now my mind has to be on Antarctica, and it can't be anywhere else. Yeah. I'm a very all or nothing person, so even in the emotional context, I get very all into that. So I don't want to have somebody get too attached to me or vice versa, because right now it seems unfair.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I was curious because there's a lot of here and watching a lot of extraordinary people doing extraordinary things, and that's the kind of stuff that could spin you out. Just relational stuff, real life
relationship stuff mess with your head like anything else.
So all that, do you have like a oh shit in case of emergency break glass like contingency plan when you're out on the ice?
Like last time I got evacuated when the frostbite hit. So worst case scenario, if something goes wrong, I will have a satellite phone. You can call for evacuation. Now it depends if there's like a crazy storm, nobody's coming for days on end. And certain things, like if I lose my tent or I lose my down jacket, then you're dead, then you're gone. But obviously I'm training to make sure that doesn't happen. Falling in crevasses is the thing that scares me the most, because if you fall in one, you're not getting rescued. Thankfully, crevasses are only kind of in one condensed area of Antarctica. It's not the whole journey. But there is rescue option for pretty much the whole journey except that crevasse area.
Have they given you, so some people say it's impossible, have you gotten like a concrete answer on the probability that you finish this?
I mean, even the head of, so ALE is a company, Antarctica Logistics and Expeditions. They've mapped out every expedition in modern history. The guy who runs the expedition manager has said anybody who attempts this will probably fail. So I recognize that the odds of failure, because covering that daily distance with a 400-pound sled, it's just, it's beyond brutal, that level of work, and doing that for 10, 12 hours a day.
Well, I'm glad it's you, not me.
Thank you.
Let's throw one of the catch boxes over to whoever's raising their hand.
We'll keep this one over here.
And you might have talked about this and I might have missed it. Can you go back to the day or days leading up? This could have been a year ago, could have been 5 years ago, could have been in 2007. But what led you to where you're at now, where you're like, I'm going to go do this 100+ day journey? Was there a moment, like when I've built anything that I've done, I can go back to certain moments in my life and say, oh, this was leading up to it, and actually it helps tell the story so other people can feel like they're a part of it. Do you have that day or days leading up that is why we get to listen to you here with Joe and Cheri?
Yeah, it was an evolution. I got into outdoor sports after joining the Marines. Before the Marines, I was very heavily into drugs and alcohol. Got into the Marines. The Marines started to teach me the beauty of suffering. Marine Corps training was obviously hard, and so I started looking for other ways to challenge myself. And nature is a beautiful playground. Unlike in the Marines or going to war where you see the human capacity for evil, when nature is hostile, it's not acting out of malice or intent. It's pure. It just is. So that was beautiful, and I got into every outdoor sport you could think of: scuba diving, skydiving, polar exploration, mountaineering. But what drew me into polar exploration was, I shared this last time, there's a quote from a famous polar explorer who says, "Polar exploration is at once the cleanest and most isolated way of having a bad time that has been devised." And I could not agree more. So I started doing polar expeditions. I did a 1-month crossing of Greenland, and this is the last great polar journey that has not been accomplished. So as I got more into polar exploration and polar travel, this sort of in some way became the inevitable destination, because it's the last great thing that hasn't been accomplished, is a full coast-to-coast crossing of Antarctica with no dogs or kites or machines. So I don't know if I ever remember specific, but actually, strangely enough, when I was in Iraq and I had never been on a polar journey before, I found this in my journal. I'd done outdoor sports, but not a big polar journey yet. I wrote in my journal that one day I want to do a never-before-accomplished expedition to Antarctica. And I reread I don't remember writing that. I reread my journal somewhat recently and was kind of blown away that that was even in there. But it was, I think, 4 years ago that I told a polar friend and kind of a polar mentor of mine that this is now the mission to do this, and it's taken a lot. I was originally supposed to do it last year. The frostbite happened, and so, the timeline has kept changing. But I think it was just an evolution of getting into outdoor sports and finding the beauty in the suffering that is polar travel that led to this.
When does this officially start now? How many days from now?
I'm supposed to go out in October of this year. We're still navigating, as you know, the fundraising element, as well as just ALE has to navigate the logistics of making this happen. Is the two things we're right now making.
So it's going to cost approximately $750,000 is what you got budgeted for everything to do this.
So now ALE, the most recent number they gave me was $750,000 to $1 million. So I don't they're still figuring out, but I'm estimating $1 million max, $750K. Yeah.
You know what I actually find interesting? I've never thought of this contrast till just now, but we have one of our Genius Network members ran for, was a congresswoman and senator, and the first female combat fighter pilot in the U.S. And during her political campaign, raised, I think, $76 million. And there's all these politicians and all these causes and all these movements that raise millions of dollars. And a lot of them are for some of the most rotten humans on the planet. I mean, from my perspective, my opinion. And stuff that when it's all said and done, is it really going to push humanity forward, or is it going to push humanity down, right? Yeah. And what you're doing could so significantly, if parlayed in the right way, be such an inspirational encouragement for humanity. And I think all of us here in a lot of ways have an opportunity to put winds behind this sail and to do something that could really significantly do it. So it's not just you doing the journey. It is another version of the 4-minute mile, which is a hell of a lot more work than running a 4-minute mile, because that was 4 minutes. You're taking 110 days, right? And you're going to do something that no human in recorded history has ever done before. And it seems to me that if humans in media had their heads screwed on straight, which they often, from my perspective, do not, this is a really important thing, and what could come out of it. So what could we do as a community to help rally and get behind and inform to do this? Not because I'm saying, hey, everybody, just throw money at Akshay because he wants to go do this crazy thing, but really, what is this thing that we could be a catalyst for? How could this be turned into something really significant that is incredibly empowering for humanity?
Well, thank you for asking. I mean, and that one thing we're doing was we're creating a documentary around it. So wasn't the intention originally, but the documentary crew heard, and so we're creating a documentary to tell this story, because like you mentioned, the 4-minute mile, when people expand their references of what's possible, it changes how they relate to themselves. And so we want to tell this, because everybody's got their own version of an Antarctic crossing. Everybody's got a polar storm that they're facing. And when we see somebody doing it at the very extreme level, we can touch people's lives. And I've experienced that, right? People have heard the things I've done. Like one guy heard me at a talk and went and climbed, he did Everest Base Camp hike and lost a ton of weight after hearing the talk. So I think we can touch a lot of lives by spreading this message and sharing the lessons from this journey. So the documentary is one aspect, and then just spreading it through the fundraising, like thanks to your wisdom and counsel, and James and all the people who are helping. We're creating a crowdfunding campaign. Nick can talk about what we're doing with NFTs to help raise funds to fund this crossing, and all of it will go to ALE to actually pay for this, because the reason it's so expensive is like that flight alone to the starting point is $250,000. You're like flying to some of the most remote regions, multiple flights with fuel barrels. So helping spread the word on that. We will have that ready in the next couple of weeks here. Nick can talk more about it, what we're doing with the NFT angle, but a crowdfunding page that we're looking to raise. I've put in, 300, 400, 500, I think close to almost $500,000 of my own, I think maybe $300,000-400,000 of my own money, and like everything I can, my heart, my soul, my finances is going to this. So anything to help, and obviously it is like, yes, I'll be alone on the ice, but it has taken an army of people to even get me here. You saw a few of them on that sizzle reel. Those guys are my family. Cheri's helped a ton, and just countless people, polar mentors, polar friends, more than I can even say in names that it takes to make this possible for one man to go along on the journey. But I do think it can be not just about me, but a 4-minute mile that helps transcends our collective consciousness on what's possible for the human spirit.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Who has? Yeah.
Yeah, actually, we talked a lot earlier about.
Oh, stand up, actually.
Okay. Yeah.
So we can sit and we'll get you on video. Thank you.
We talked a lot earlier about the value in the presence of a moment, right? The experience. And oftentimes, it's not the best experience that's the most valuable. It's knowing how to stay in the ones that aren't the best experience, right? So something that can be valuable for everyone is when you're in that oh shit moment, what method do you use to ground yourself, to bring yourself back? Because 110 days out in the middle of nowhere, it's very easy for one thought to avalanche into a million thoughts.
Yeah.
That makes you want to get out of it. So what do you do in those oh shit moments to come back to that grounding presence, to get yourself back into the place where you can make sound decisions and move forward?
Yeah. So there's many tools, and one thing, just remind me, I'll share that same thing that I have, like the 25 weapons to navigate the pain cave. I can share that with you. You can share that with your tribe, like a PDF that I've throughout my running ultra marathons and like different ways to navigate it. But a few different tools. One of them is always remembering that I get to be here. So even when I'm in the Arctic, it's a privilege that I get to experience that level of solitude. And I go back and I think about the people that I've seen. I've worked in post-conflict zones. I've worked with children who are survivors of sex trafficking, former child soldiers, and you see the hell that most human beings endure. Nothing I will do will ever come close to that. So like a deep sense of gratitude. In Latin, there's a phrase called amor fati, which means love fate. It's easy to feel grateful when life is good, but can you love fate when it's not good? Right? So that experience of pure gratitude. Sometimes what I do is I go deeper into the pain cave. So when I'm in pain, I'm actually like one of my weapons to navigate it is I will literally say this out loud. When I did that 50-mile run around the cul-de-sac, I was sharing this, that I was saying to myself, talking out loud, I want the devil himself to rise out of hell in an attempt to destroy my soul so I can look that motherfucker in the eye and bury him in his own blood. So I'm like, bring on as much as you can throw at me, because I know that the greater your demons, the greater the divinity required to rise above them. So suffering is an opportunity for transcendence. Like to me, suffering is a training ground for self-transcendence. So bring on whatever the fuck you can throw at me, and I'm gonna smile at this. This is my opportunity, right? And then sometimes, paradoxically, the exact opposite, I'm escaping it. Like I don't want to be in it, so I'll listen to positive music. So the thing is, even though they seem like opposites, all these different weapons to navigate the pain cave, they all have their place. And the more you play in that arena, the more you will know which weapon you need at different times. So you were talking about how when you do cold tubs, it's just sort of being meditative, being very present. So one way to bring present is bring yourself back into the senses. So I'll think about my hands holding the ski poles. I'll think about my feet moving in the skis. Think about what I see. If I see anything, sometimes if it's a whiteout, you don't. But those are a few different tools to navigate it. And there's like a series more that I'll share with you all after this. Just remind me. But those are some ways. I think the recognizing gratitude is one of the more powerful, and then also like tapping into, like, to me, it's like you're being you're representing humanity at its finest here. You know, if you quit now, what are you saying about the human spirit? You know, so tapping into that, like you're showing what the human spirit is capable of. So what are you saying about it if you quit, if you be weak? You know, if you show that weakness, and then tapping into God as well. Like remembering that this moment is an experience of God. You know, like they always say, there's no atheists in foxholes. When do we come closest to God? When we're in the depths of pain, when we're tapping into, and we all have our own version of what that word means, but when we're in the depths of pain is when we come closest to it. So whenever I'm in that hell, I recognize that this is my opportunity to come closest to God, and very often it is. Like the things I hear, the spiritual downloads, you know, it's in that when you're in the deepest hell.
Yeah. I have a question for you. I want you to define this word balance. So according to Akshay, balance is?
I think there's two ways to cultivate balance. Balance on the one hand is I'm going to try to balance between, let's say, the work-life balance that we know and try to find a way to have a little bit of this, a little bit of that. The other way is going absolutely all out in one way and then doing it for a certain chunk of time and then going all out the other way. And I think if you do that to find balance, you're actually going to find a greater level of peace, because the other way, we all heard like the myth of work-life balance. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
So just go ham, go all out. Like in this phase of my life, Antarctica is my world, it's my soul.
That's what I'm hearing from you. It's just like balance is going all in, 100% in this, then shifting.
Exactly. So if you think of like a weighing scale, imagine having like 10 pounds on each weighing scale, it's balanced, right? But another way to think about it is if I put 20 pounds on this side, this will dominate, but then if I move 20 pounds to this side, you know, over a time period, they're equal, if that makes sense, you know? Yeah. So just go ham into one edge.
Yeah.
And you're going to discover so much more by doing that.
Great perspective.
Yeah. Was there someone online that had a question?
No, I think we were doing something else.
Okay. Okay, and then I think, was it you guys over there? Okay, Douglas, go.
This is great. How did you assemble your team?
It has been built over the years, you know, so you meet one person and then I feel very, very blessed the amount of people who are coming on board to support this. And I've met a few friends at events that have become like family, and they're just some of the greatest people. So coming to events like this is a great way to have met people, and then they'll introduce you. You know what, my dad has a good definition of leadership is the ability to effectively articulate a compelling vision. So I think when you have a vision that transcends you, and it helps inspire people to come on board. And I'm very blessed to have some of the greatest people who are helping me in every capacity. But I've met them through events and then, you know, telling. And you also got to be willing to share it, like announce it, share it, you know. So then people don't know, nobody can help. And if you put yourself in rooms like this with good people, they'll want to help. And then, you know, becomes something that's greater than the sum of each individual part, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hey, how's it going? This is super gnarly. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Really looking forward to the end of the journey here with you.
Are you going on the journey? Douglas, hide in your back.
You can hang out in the sled. I'll drag you along.
Yeah, you know, I'm just there's like fear and all this. People get in their own way like all the time with everything, right? And I've heard so many and learned from so many personal development coaches, you know, and it's always like you want to sell people what they want, but then give them what they need, you know, and what they need is to help them get out of their own way and recognize their own, you know, mind frame, right? And give them a better framework to go forward. So I'm just kind of curious to know from you, where do you plan, like say if this all works out, or say if it doesn't work out, but you're alive and you come back, like you make it through, right? How are you going to position this? Because this is, like I said, a pretty gnarly thing that you're doing. No one's ever done it, right? So the amount of attention, media, exposure, the things that are going to come after October or after January, February, when you get back, how are you preparing for that? And like, I'm just kind of curious to know from the business side and the media side, like, have you thought, or has your team talked to you about what that would look like? Like, what type of business model were you going to get into next on how to spread your word and impact the message?
So in terms of the business side, like with FEARVANA, we're building the goal is to kind of create this whole ecosystem of products and services, similar to kind of a Virgin model, but we're not trying to get into like air travel, really staying in the space of, or any of that stuff. It's in the mental and spiritual well-being. So we have like, well, that shirt I was wearing earlier, like FEARVANA clothing line, FEARVANA supplements, FEARVANA fuels.
A FEARVANA airline would be very interesting.
Cold tugs the whole flight.
Just embrace it.
Exactly. You're gonna suffer the whole flight.
Man, the people that jump on that flight are like, yeah.
We'll hook them up with a new fit the whole flight.
No, because the current airline industry motto is, you know, we're not happy till you're not happy. This will be a whole new one. Sorry. So you got the T-shirts, you got all the.
Yeah, supplement line like FEARVANA. Like I'm hosting a retreat later this year, co-hosting with somebody, but potentially FEARVANA retreats. Long term, I have a vision too to get into more like the tech space where we create a sort of using augmented reality to create like a FEARVANA journeys platform to help people walk their own hero's journey using some of the methodologies and frameworks in the FEARVANA universe that like leveraging technology to help people walk their own hero's journey. You know, so I consider myself an adventurer first, entrepreneur second for sure. So more like Richard Branson, I'll be the face of the brand doing the crazy things that I do. I don't know what the hell will come up after Antarctica. Nobody's ever tried a winter expedition in Antarctica, so who knows? But but we'll see where the road takes me on that front. But I definitely want to like again build an army of people again to run the different arms and help people walk their own version of Antarctica is kind of the vision for how I want to do it business-wise. But I have to say, like one thing to your point about everybody's navigating their own fear, one key thing I would say even right now is I think one of the greatest human fears that people wouldn't necessarily say is a human fear is stillness. And I think if there's one thing that people could do is spend time, like lock yourself in a dark closet for 30 minutes. You don't have to go into a 10-day dark retreat, you know? Start there is something I would really encourage people, and it's extremely hard. Like people will freak out after sometimes 5 minutes in meditation, you know? But start there is kind of where I would encourage people to do. And you know, we've all heard like cold tubs, there's many ways to go push yourself in suffering, but stillness is a very different kind that sometimes is even harder than doing like the hard workout or something. So that's where I would just at least right now start, and then we want to grow the business after that.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting too, because I think there's a lot of opportunity here, not only with new businesses, and there's a lot of ingredients here that every single person can use just for their own personal motivation. Like as an example, I get into cold plunges almost daily. And so Cheri was in a cold plunge earlier this morning. I just did a sauna. I didn't have enough time. I had to get over here, but I did work out right before I came here and all this stuff. And there are days where I'm just like, oh, I don't want to do any of this shit. And you sent me via text your recent getting in the Antarctica into the frozen. I mean, it is like, and you go completely underwater in between two slabs of ice, and you're out bare. I mean, it's freezing.
It's minus 18 degrees outside.
Yeah, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like going, I am not bitching about anything today. I mean, like, you know, and because and I literally went and just did something that I would not have done had I not seen a freaking 1-minute video clip.
Yes.
Awesome.
And if you just take that little piece of information and you use it as like a North Star, or you use it as just a reminder, you use it as a motivator, you use it as a perspective. You know, there's so much of that stuff, and it's funny you say about Virgin, because, you know, I became Richard Branson's largest fundraiser. I've interviewed Richard probably more than anyone. I've spent 6 weeks of my life on Necker Island. Most of those days were breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day with Richard. I've gone out on, you know, just frickin', you know, boats with just me and Richard. You know, I mean, so I spent a lot of time with him. You articulate more things about how to do stuff in 30 minutes than it would take him 10 hours to do. He's a very bright guy. He's just an intuitive entrepreneur. He doesn't explain quite how he does what he does. And so you have, you know, most people are enamored with Richard Branson because of the Virgin brand and everything, but it's like, you know, you have the ability to really inspire, like your 25 what are they called?
Weapons to navigate
weapons.
the pain
Yes, I was thinking in my mind lessons. They're amazing. I mean, they are amazing, and every human can learn something really valuable from them, and some of them contradict, you know, each other, but you explain why. And so there, you know, I look at, like, people are always looking for, you know, how to be successful. What is success? And I have this sort of notion, like, success is different for each person. You know, it's not my how am I going to tell anyone what's successful? I mean, you could say successful is like winning a sports game and if you hit this score. I mean, that's different than like saying I'm a successful human because I made a lot of money or because I won this title or whatever. So I think success is an individual thing, and I think the way that you are doing stuff, every single human can contrast some form of betterment through a mirror that you're putting up for them to look at. And so I want to invite everyone to really go, like, your book is incredible. It is really a great book. And so I would encourage everyone to read this. And I would like this video, we're recording this. I'd like to actually share this as video and you guys share this and have your own perspective and take on it. And I would almost, how many here in the room do podcasts? Or do any sort of interviews or YouTube channel or social media? Yeah, I would almost say take parts of what he's saying and just show a clip of it and then say, here's my thought about this, what do you think about it? So this is not just a conversation with, you know, me, Dr. Ong, and Akshay. It becomes a conversation that we put out into the world and we ask people to dialogue with it. I don't want this to be a monologue. I want it to be a dialogue. And I want your journey to be like a, you know, not an event that happened once. I want it to be something that is a domino. You know, we have a big giant domino here, and I always think of, you know, what are the people, what are the books, what are the relationships, what are the situations, what are the methodologies, the strategies, the experiences I've had as a human that have had a domino effect on my life. And there's some that have been very negative, and there's some that have been very positive. And I think the people that become some of the greatest dominoes for other people, it actually, because of what is the negative dominoes, their life that force it. I mean, the whole story of, you have to tell this because it's often looked at. I mean, I see people like, what? But at the same time, the lesson behind it, you know, the picture of your buddy who died, and you having the picture and reminding you. Can you tell how you interact? Because it's, for some people, it will come across as like, wow, that's really dark. But your ability to transform, you know, suffering and pain into productivity, I think is quite fascinating.
You know, when I came back from Iraq, I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, and I struggled with survivor's guilt from losing my friend in the war. And to this day, there's a big part of me that believes it should have been me that died instead of him. And what I started to learn was these things that they were labeling me with disorder. Like, I was also very hypervigilant of loud noises. I didn't like being in crowds. And I started going down my rabbit hole of research. Like, this wasn't a disorder. It was a very normal response to war. You know, I spent 7 months where loud noises equals death. Inevitably, I'm going to be hypervigilant. Survivor's guilt. Everybody said, don't feel guilty. Rationally, I got it, right? Like, war, you can't control what happens. Bullets fly where they fly. But emotionally, that guilt was an expression of love. You know, it's not a bad emotion. So what I did was, I put a picture of my friend up on my wall, and it said, this should have been you. Earn this life. And it was right next to my bed. I would see it every day when I wake up. And my guilt became my ally. My guilt became my fuel. To this day, you know, I was telling him over there that I had a conversation in the darkness with God that left me bawling in tears. And it was like, I believe I owe a debt for this life. And people have told me, like, that's, you shouldn't, like, that's dark, it's not healthy to look at it. And it's not like each one have their own paradigms and constructs of how we operate in the world. But the darkness we feel, like many people, and I can even share this, I was working with a friend of mine who had gone through some real trauma. And we had, like, before I say what I say, she was ready to go here. Like, we'd done a lot of work, and she'd gone through this horrific childhood trauma. And I said to her, what if you deserved what you went through? And she goes, whoa. Because, I mean, who would tell her that you deserve this horrific thing you went through? But I asked her, did some part of you feel like you deserved it? She said, yes. Did some part of you feel guilty for it? She said, yes. I said, good, go there. You're feeling it. Everybody says you don't deserve it, right? You shouldn't feel guilty. But if you're feeling it, go there. Like, let that darkness have its voice. Okay, what does that mean about God? What does that mean about humanity? What does that mean about me? That night, she sent me a text saying, fuck you, Akshay, because she went into a very dark space. But the next day, she shared with her husband for 25 years, for the first time, what actually what happened in the trauma. So you have to give that darkness its voice. That guilt became my ally, and it was a dark thing. It was an intense thing, but it's useful. You know, that scene in Saving Private Ryan at the end where he says, Tom Hanks tells Matt Damon's character, earn this. I have that scene in my phone, and I watch it on the ice sometimes. To me, I got to earn this life. And again, I'm not always in that space. Sometimes it's very light, and it's playful, and I'm just happy, like I'm literally listening to dance music and playing. But again, you have to find the different weapons. And sometimes remembering that I have a debt to owe for this life that I've been gifted, I have to earn that shit, is the most powerful weapon to get me through the hard times.
Yeah, yeah. Is there anything else? Any other questions, Cheri? Anything you guys want to ask before we wrap up here?
Well,
Yeah, and then we'll tell them.
so much for bringing the light back to humanity. Right? What's great about blockchain? We have anonymity. We get to see what people are just without skin color or religion, anything like that. So, seeing you out there and being a slave to my own community, just seeking more instead of seeking closer, I think changed my perspective in life. And for you to get out and be you, who you are, going after what you want, and letting everybody say, hey, you know what, this is who I am. And chasing the nirvana, going to cross to the other side and bringing back that information to humanity, going to the darkness and bringing that light up. So thank you. But my question is, how old are you?
38. Thank you.
I just got a quick one. Are you aware of any like physical, biological, permanent changes that may happen after you're done with this?
Missing a finger.
I'll be missing too soon.
Other than that, like, I mean, to put yourself through this.
That level of stress,
that
yeah.
Stress, the hormones, I mean, like.
I'm preparing for the readjustment when I'm back. Like I've heard polar explorers who do long journeys, they can't see straight for a few weeks because you're just seeing empty white nothingness, so your brain loses the ability to see contrast. So I'm pretty sure I'll be in horrible physical shape after I come back. My eyes will readjust. The mental adjustment will be kind of like coming back from war in a way. I have a little Wilson-like character that I speak to on the ice, you know, from Castaway. So my friends keep joking. They're like, dude, you're going to be so weird. When I come back, I'll be going on dates and having Wilson in my corner with me. So there'll be a readjustment in that sense, at least temporarily, that I'm preparing for. But as far as like permanent ones, I'm not sure. I mean, if I lose a few years from my life, to me, it's worth it. But
We'll have to coordinate an event. So either like a Genius event or one of our events right when we get back, so we don't just see firsthand.
What? Exactly. I'll limp in with
Bring Wilson with you.
I have Wilson with me actually in that backpack.
Gonna make like a bunch of.
He'll need RSVP for Eunice.
Yeah, a bunch of little social media clips will come out of that one. Yeah.
I'll just limp my way up here with crutches.
Yeah. So let's talk about the project. How you tying this all together?
Yeah. So. We chatted, you know, Joe introduced us, as he does. And he's like, hey, we're doing this and this. And there's actually Joe's idea that said, hey, this is something we could do on blockchain. And the reason that I want to talk about this a little bit is there's blockchain. And Howard knows blockchain really well. He's super bullish on blockchain that's different than cryptocurrency. And he was like, can we do something on blockchain? Well, what are you already doing? That's the first question. And you know, we're looking to maybe do 750,000. Now it's $1 million. It'll probably keep going up. Hopefully, you know how it goes. I was like, yeah, I think we do something really cool with this because NFTs. Kevin's doing it a little bit with Dr. Wolf. What I like about NFTs is not that they're pictures that you can buy and then somebody else will buy them from you for more money. That's like a thing that happens sometimes. But it's really the provenance and the royalties. That's really the power in NFTs right now. In a non-fungible asset, whatever you want to call it, is provenance and royalties, meaning you can see on the blockchain forever who created it and when it was created. It's proof that this is created by Akshay at this time on this block. It's an original, and you can see everywhere it's been. And so typically with anything that can be forged, like high-end art, you know, the provenance can take months or years. When you get a painting, right? Have you ever had an issue with forgeries? With
one of our artists has, yes.
Yeah. So anything that can be forged or faked, especially in the art world, it could take months or years to figure out where it's been. Can we prove it was there? Is this an original? So I love the provenance, and then royalties. And Danny's Lisco will be here. Maybe we'll talk about it. Is people that do cool shit, especially that create cool stuff, you can code into the blockchain that when it changes hands and it becomes popular and people are selling it, the royalties are going back to wherever the creator designates that they go. And that should, in theory, incentivize people to continue to create better instead of, like Ticketmaster taking all the profits. So I think about any project that people do stuff in the real world, I think is there utility in provenance and is there utility in royalties? That's the main thing. So as we're talking, it was like, you're already doing this. You have a really cool setup. Where are you doing $3 minimum?
Yeah, $3 is equal to 1 meter on the ice.
Yeah, so $3 is 1 meter on the ice. So they're setting up this whole crowdsourcing. I don't know if you're using whatever software you're using, but they already have all these tiers and these deliverables. So it's really, really simple. Everybody wants to be more complicated. It was like, let's just echo this structure on the blockchain for the people that know how to navigate the blockchain. They will also get, so you guys know how a mint works. You go, yeah, I mint this for $3 or $6 or $9 or whatever. You push the button, you're creating the art. So if you guys, that's what I think is cool about the mints, is you're actually creating something that did not exist before. But you also have proof of ownership. So if there's a ton of media and he becomes hyper famous, you'd be like, yeah, I contributed to that. Here's my proof. Now, some people are going to value that. Some people won't. So they can still donate through credit card or ACH or whatever. So for the small segment of people that value the provenance, like, yeah, here's non-fungible proof. I knew this guy before you did. Look, I put $3 into his thing, and there is a non-zero probability that those do become really valuable. It's kind of a plus, plus sum thing. So we were talking about it, and I'll show you the art in a minute, but it's really simple like that. It's just, hey, here's the page, your team's setting it up, really easy for us. Grey Wolf Labs, we're just gonna kind of piggyback off of that. So if you want a collectible on the blockchain, get it right here. And what I'm thinking about doing, and we'll dial in the details, is I'm thinking about doing an open mint until it's funded. So whenever we have that number, you say, hey, we funded it, we close the mint. And so there will be that many of these NFTs in the world, and only that many ever. So there's a little bit, I don't know, maybe there's 40 of them, maybe there's 1,000 of them, but it'll be a super limited collector's item. Like, really, you were here at the ground floor, and you have proof. And obviously the royalties can go to, if you turn around and sell it, then the royalties can go to funding whatever, Genius Recovery or documentary and all that stuff. So that's what we're doing. Super straightforward. I'll share, just because I know a lot of people are trying to build on blockchain, and they always make the mistake of trying to do something new. It's very expensive to do something new. It's very risky to do something new. There are a lot of ways, Recovery Punks is similar, where we can utilize blockchain technology in a way that actually benefits what you're already doing without taking on more risk, more time, more effort, and all that stuff. So I'll share, do you mind if I share the art?
I don't know.
Okay. So I'll share the art he sent over, but first, the Guardian Academy, it is really difficult to become a Guardian these days. How many have gone through the whole process? It's pretty difficult to become a Guardian. It requires a significant amount of contribution, a significant amount of time. Joe Polish was our first honorary Guardian because he's just shown up and he's clearly contributed. He introduced us to Akshay. And also, since he just is here and helpful human being, Akshay, you are we had Joe first, we had Dr. Jeff Spencer, and we had Andre Norman. And now we have Akshay Nanavanti as an honorary Guardian. So welcome to come to any of our events, and obviously they'll tell you once you become a Guardian, you get a significant amount of support from, I think there's 112 Guardians. And so some of them are watching, some will catch this replay. And what you did was you sent me 50 custom images. You want to just click through them? And you made these with Midjourney?
Yeah.
Or what kind of prompting were you using?
Took me a little while to kind of figure out the prompting. I was very new to this world. So I have a friend who was a little more familiar with Midjourney who was kind of guiding me to, I was doing it on the exploration adventure theme and thinking about like what are the different areas I've played in, like caves, mountains, this is Arizona, and then coming up with, that was Galapagos, like man ice climbing, or standing in front of a volcano and then just exploring further, or like in that case, exhausted man standing in Arizona desert after a hike or something like that. Just thinking about my moments that I've done and then naming them too, and then we came up with the one-liners that
Brandon,
kind of fit
will you pull up the audios?
That fit each one.
So you'll see each, there's 50 different pieces of art, and each one will have an audio clip that has, yeah.
Plugged in right now.
That was wild.
I don't think that's how it was.
Sound like that.
Try another one.
It's gonna fight. No, it's gonna fight because I can take it off share, so let me just unshare it.
Yeah, we don't care about the Zoomers. They're less important.
Yeah, I don't know.
No
That's
worries.
right.
Yeah, my friend had that idea to say, why don't you add audio onto it? So I was like, sure. I didn't. Yeah.
So we'll have these really cool collectibles. Each audio is named, like the audio and the image have the same name, so each image has an audio that goes with it. And the audios were what inspired the audios?
It's kind of different, like short one-liners that summarize the philosophy of that has been developed through all my life experiences. Like some of the things I was sharing. Like one of them is, what was I saying earlier? Yeah, when you seek out a suffering of the spirit, you'll find salvation of the soul. So different kind of.
I don't know why this is echoing.
Or if you don't seek out a worthy struggle, the struggle will find you anyway. Different kind of like catchphrases that represent the philosophy of everything I'm talking about in FEARVANA.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we'll be rolling that out. I'm just going to wait for your marketing team.
Yes,
and we're just going to piggyback. Really simple. We're just going to put up the NFTs.
Is that the pursuit of it leads to greater struggle, but the pursuit of a worthy struggle leads to happiness as a side effect.
So the starting point of that was the paradox of happiness is that.
Yeah. The paradox of happiness is that the pursuit of it leads to greater struggle, but the pursuit of a worthy struggle leads to happiness as a side effect.
So different stuff like that. And then obviously it can be explained further.
Very cool.
Do one more real quick, just selfishly, I want to hear one more.
Put it up to the mic on Cheri.
To the world and wander. There you
shove it
will
in
find
Cheri's
the
face
nectar
there.
of life and the essence of the human soul.
Beautiful.
So you see we're creating these little collectibles, and Grey Wolf Labs, Guardian Academy, it's really about supporting extraordinary people doing extraordinary things. And that's how we take the blockchain, right? And we say, hey, look here, there's actually value here. In the real world, you can use this technology in a way that, like, we're doing good. It's not buy a coin and cross your fingers. And so, one, it's a pleasure and honor to support extraordinary people like everybody sitting up here. Cheri, if you want to do some stuff on the blockchain, let us know. We do little, like, never mind. Talk about it. I don't have a hot mic here.
Well, I'm trying to figure out the best way to tie something together without sounding incredibly crude. So we got, one of the top vaginal plastic surgeons in the world. You're getting ready to take an expedition across the Antarctica and do something that no human in recorded history has ever done. I think asking someone out on a date is like the world for you, for the guy that started FEARVANA, and life is pretty damn interesting, isn't it? So that being said, any famous last words that you would like to, because this may be the last time you have a chance to publicly address people until we see you after the expedition. Hopefully you will survive, and you will, you will encounter this thing. So what final words of wisdom, advice, suggestions, or encouragement would you offer to everyone here as they encounter fears and challenges and difficulties every single day?
I think I'll summarize with words from Viktor Frankl, wiser man than myself, who said, self-actualization is the side effect of self-transcendence. And what I mean by that is, if we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, everybody here, as we talked about, is seeking some version of self-actualization. The greatest thing you can do on that journey is transcend yourself. And that means transcend yourself for something greater, someone else, but also transcending yourself for yourself. I stumbled into a quote from Michelangelo just yesterday. He said, Lord, free me from myself so that I may please you. And what that means to me, there's many ways to interpret it, is like I kind of turned it in my own version of, please, like, Lord, free me of myself so I can be you, like be my own Buddha. So to transcend our own thoughts, our own feelings for the higher version of ourself. So train in that. That comes from stillness, that comes from suffering. Like I said, suffering to me is a training ground for self-transcendence, and self-transcendence or self-actualization is the side effect of self-transcendence. I think just play transcending for someone else, for something else, and for yourself.
Real quickly, I want to try this. It may work, it may not. If you had to summarize into one word that you got from hearing him today, if you had to pick one word, let's real quickly go through and just share what's the first word that comes to mind that you got out of listening to our conversation with Akshay. Start with Nick. One word.
Ballsy.
Ballsy.
Endure.
Gratitude.
Focus or choice.
That's more than one word, Howard. No, three actually. More. Howard.
Transcend. Resilience. Stillness.
Fear.
Fear. Inspiring.
Listen.
Freak.
Courage.
Visceral.
What was yours?
Visceral.
Visceral, okay.
You could hear it especially when you said it again.
Knowing.
Live. Struggle.
Fearless.
Opportunity.
Raw.
Anything for you, Cheri?
Learning.
Learning. I just say courage. Courage. So, you're awesome, dude.
Awesome.
We're all here wishing you the support and the best. So fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, so here's what I want to do really quick is you got your one word, 6-word update. Write down a 6-word update. If you don't know what a 6-word update is, it's just summarizing something that you've learned or something that you thought in 6 words. Try to tell a story beginning, middle, end. It just forces you to, be concise about your takeaways.